Hi, this is Jocelyn. Welcome to my channel. So this is a video about a book that I just finished. Last week, I finished reading Little Life by Hanya, Yanagihara. This is the most emotional book that I have ever read in my entire life. So I just feel like, I have to make a video about it, and maybe I can make this as a recommendation to you. Or if you're hesitating about whether to read this book, maybe this video can help you make your mind. It can be a really long book, so I definitely recommend you to know more about it before you start reading it. I made a little notes of what I want to talk about this book, like what I was feeling about the story, about what I like or dislike about the book, and whether I recommend it. Like if you go on websites or applications like this one, then they're going to tell you in every language that this is going to be a story about four best friends. It's a lifelong journey of four best friends searching for meaning of life. At least in my personal opinion, it is not. I feel like it's about just one person. It's about Jude and people who loves Jude and who Jude loves, and his lifelong struggles to deal with his childhood traumas. So I would say that this book is about one person, but on top of that, it shows the power of friendship, of family, of romance. I read the book on my iPad on the Apple Book application. So can you see that? It is a really long book. If you have gotten it in a physical form, you will see how thick it is. It's like 800 pages. It is really long. It's going to be a huge commitment to start the book. I have to be honest, the first 10% or 15% of the book is super tedious and boring. You just have to get through that part, because the job and the function of that part is actually get you committed and invested in these characters, so that in the latter part of the book, they broke your heart. I would give it a 3.5 or 4 stars out of 5. 5 stars being my favorite novel, Station 11. But I want to give you a head up that vocabulary-wise, this book can be a little bit hard. So my opinion is that this would be a book suitable for people who have a vocabulary size over 8,000 or 9,000 words. I recently have my vocabulary size tested, and it is around 12 to 13,000, which is not a lot. So I do find this book a little bit challenging. It is manageable. It's not slowing me down from reading it. I finished it in 5 days or 6 days, so it's okay. Just be aware that it can be a little bit harder than your everyday YA, young adult novel, and it is a little bit long. Overall, when I was reading the book, I feel sad, afraid, and really depressed and hopeless, to be honest. So if you are dealing with some bad emotions, I don't recommend you to read this book. When I'm feeling down, I don't read this book at all. I just put it aside because it's gonna make me feel worse. I actually made a list of the contents that I considered would be a trigger for you. So if you want to avoid any of these following things, don't read the book. The book contains detailed description of autonomy, suicide attempt, suicide, sexual abuse, domestic violence, drug abuse, forced prostitution, and pedophile. And a lot of the abuse and violence are actually forced on a minor, on a kid. Now I want to talk about what I like about the book. First of all, I loved these characters. I become super invested in them. The main character Jude, and also William, Harold, and even JB. These are the characters that I love, but also these are the characters which has most description, or most of the book are actually written in their point of views. Which gives me more reason to fall in love with them. And also throughout the book, there are a lot of suspenses going on, so it makes you feel super curious about what's actually going to happen to all the characters, or else what had happened to them in the past. And secondly, I actually have a love and hate relationship with this thing, is how Hanya Yanagihara actually managed to manipulate the reader's emotion. I think she did a great job of doing that, because like I said, I cried so many times during the book, but also sometimes it feels very intentional, and those are the times that I didn't cry. And then in terms of the language, of the description, I love the focus of detail in this book. I feel like the author literally materialized mental illness, like you can see it in the book. I once heard somebody talk about depression like this: if you have gone through depression, then there are no words needed to describe what it feels like. But for anybody who hasn't gone through that kind of downness or depression, then there aren't words enough in the world that could possibly, describe it. But in this book, there are some details or some paragraphs that focused on Jude that made me feel like, okay, so this is probably what depression would be like. It is that good. And then I want to talk about the parts that I love the most. There are a few chapters or a few parts that was written in Harold's point of view, where it feels like Harold is talking to William, or talking to William's picture at least. Those are the parts that I love the most. So once I finished the book, I went back to these chapters that I loved. These chapters actually aren't very long, so it's very efficient to let you know more about Harold, about his life, about his relation and his bond and connection with Jude and William. So yeah. And now I want to talk about the parts that I don't like about the book. It's 3.5 stars out of 5, so it's still okay, but there are a list of things that I hate about this book. I have already mentioned this. The beginning part of the book is just so tedious and boring. Then that leads us to the second thing that I hate about this book. It's where I feel like the author neglected some of the important characters. Like, it spends so many time and length of the book on unnecessary details, and then when it comes to really important characters like Julia, like Malcolm, I just don't know much about them. During this entire book, we don't actually see Julia having more conversation with Jude. Most of it is with Jude and Harold, and Julia is always like in the background and you just don't see her much. And Malcolm, which is supposed to be one of the main characters, right? And according to the first part of the book, Malcolm is actually the person that is the most mild and peaceful, that actually glued the whole group together. I definitely think that he deserved more parts of the book. And on top of that, I feel like I don't know much about Richard, Lucien, and even Andy. If you have read the book, you know how important they are and how much they have attributed to the story. I just don't know why I don't get much information about them. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't even know what Andy looks like, do we? And then there's one thing that I want to mention that I don't particularly dislike, is that it has an uncertainty of time. It's not like set in the 1980s. It is completely fictional, lifted from the restraint of time. So sometimes it do feel super hard to visualize or imagine whatever's going on. For most fictional books, we see event after event after event, and with conversation filled in between, right? But in this book, it's not that. It's like a friend is sitting down next to you and talking to you, not exactly very logically. You can just feel like the mind is wandering about between different events. So it might be really hard to get a grip of whatever is going on. Yeah, I feel like talking about this book in a video would definitely release me a little bit from the book, because I'm still somehow trapped in the emotion or the story itself. And if you have already read the book, or you finished reading the book after watching this video, feel free to leave a comment down below or contact me directly, because I want to know what you think about this book, and we can have our little own community of book reading, and that would be a really great thing to have. So basically in 2021, I feel like making more videos about this, because one of my New Year's resolution in 2021 is to read more books, at least one book per week. So whenever I feel like there's a book I want to share with you guys, I would make a video like this. And if you have any suggestions or what's your favorite book, you can definitely leave a comment down below. And I guess I'll see you guys in another video. Bye bye! Have a nice day, have a nice week, have a nice little life. What am I saying?